Very good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Closing off day two, we have a wide range of panel members sharing their views of the future of our technology ecosystem. Moderating this session is Bobby Varanasi, the Chief Executive Officer of Matryzel, is consulting Sendirian Berhad, Malaysia. Over to you, Bobby.
Thank you very much, Hasu. Good afternoon, everybody, and particularly to our distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Lovely panel. I think perhaps one of the few times that we have had leaders managing various sections of the country, right from Johor, led by Datuk Ismail, through to Azmi and KL, the heart and soul almost like of Malaysia, through to Mr. Tony from Penang, and of course Fajaffri, last but not the least, looking after the entire Northern Corridor. I think this is an extremely amazing set of individuals who here will be able to distill for yourselves two particular facets beyond many other components. One is the commitment that their institutions and themselves have placed as it relates to transforming the Malaysian economy, not just digitally, but much larger than that, but enabled by digital solutions. And the second thing is how the corridors are looking at Malaysian competencies within those specific regions. Johor is great for some things, KL is great for some things, Penang is great for some things, the Northern Corridor is great for some things, and they don't necessarily have to be the same. And I think these four gentlemen are doing a phenomenal job in identifying those specific strengths, if I were to use the term very loosely, to be able to build on an economic subsystem and therefore regionally and globally contribute to what Malaysia is expected to do. And in doing so, of course, we will talk about jobs, we will talk about GDP enablement, purchasing power, and all of this stuff. What we will not do is really not spend too much time on what happened just in the COVID times. I think that is too very limiting a conversation, and I think the gentlemen here will agree. We need to look beyond. Your goals are obviously a lot beyond just reacting or responding to COVID. I'm sure, gentlemen, you will agree with that. It's about resilience, it's about sustainability, it's about growth, it's about inclusion in a way that befits what we've always wanted to be. Not just a developed nation, but a nation that has every single citizen contributing to socio-economic development in the right way possible. With that, as a broader perspective, we will focus on initiatives that each of these corridors are pursuing. And we will take a long view again, not a short view. On top of it, we will also look at what are some of the regulatory and compliance related aspects. We will not spend too much time on the regulation side of things, but we will spend some time because regulation has a significant role to play in today's modern economies, where government and private sector have to collaborate. There is no one versus the other model. So we will go through that, and we will love to hear from our panelists some of their success stories, gentlemen. And I'm sure you have a range of success stories. We would love to hear those. And please do feel free as well to talk about maybe one or two, things that we may have missed on. Not by design, but perhaps, by circumstances. And that has taught yourselves a certain set of lessons that you have then helped, that have helped you to, go and re-strategize or restructure your approaches. So without further ado, what I will do is, ladies and gentlemen, the way this conversation will work is it is free flow. There are no slides. These are experienced gentlemen. Between the four of them, you're looking at 100 years of experience. So please feel free to ask questions as you go along. Trust me, there's a lot of experience. We will have each of the panelists, give their top line thoughts, and then I will take the conversation through as we go along, ask them a few questions here and there, maybe I won't pit each of you against each other, but it might come to be, we might just ask, flip the questions back and forth. Let's have an informal conversation. And as the questions come from the audience, we will direct them to the right individuals as the audience deems appropriate. So I would like to start off, gentlemen, in no particular order. Datuk, from Johor, if you would like to give your top line thoughts, and then we'll move forward.
Thank you, Bobby. Ladies and gentlemen, Iskandar, Malaysia is an economic region established 15 years ago. And the whole philosophy of idea of the development of Iskandar, Malaysia is definitely we want to bring this region to realize the vision of Malaysia to be a developed country. And the idea then, and still until today, is to ensure that Malaysia's growth will be spread the four corners of the nation, rather than focus on one or two urbanized or economically growth areas. So this is really a long-term plan that has been put into place with the support of both the federal government and the state government. And definitely in the early stages of our development, we really have to work together, not only with the business community and the people at large, but more importantly with the governments, to ensure that the government are also on the same page, the way in which we want to see growth happening in a big way in this region. It would be not be meaningful if the existence of IRDA, for instance, as the driver for economic growth, where we will only be touching on mediocre things, but rather to create what we term as high impact development, to create the wealth and how we generate that wealth to be distributed fairly and equitably to the population at large. So this is where in the early days, part of our challenge is really to challenge the policies, and challenge the laws and regulation that existed on that day. Not to say that the policies and the laws have not served the nation well, but as we grow, we really need to ask our question, if you want to allow this region to breathe seamlessly, we must revisit some of the policies, although they have served us well, but what more can we do to somehow test those policies to make sure that they are being made relevant to allow the region to grow. And similarly, the laws and regulation, some of them have actually been with us for decades, and we really need to allow these laws to be tweaked or to be edited and to be improved in order to allow some of the developments. If I have the time, I will cite a few examples, especially in the development of infrastructure in this region, in order to allow for better connectivity for people and goods to move about, and to ensure that we really would be able to create this high impact growth, hence exploiting whatever resources that we have in order to enjoy exponential growth and definitely wealth generation and creation. I have a few examples later, which if time permitted, I will share with you on some of the initial projects that we are doing, where we have to see and test the laws in the area of public transport, in the area of sewerage treatment, in the area of housing, as well as in the area of which we are venturing now into modern farming. So I will stop for now and allow my other panel members to say their part. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Datuk. Azmi, we are moving up the map, so we'll just go along the lines, south to north. Over to you, Azmi. KL, KL is KL. Everybody knows it, right? The hub, the heart, the soul, perhaps. I'm sure Tony will disagree and Fajaffri will. But your thoughts, please, Azmi, on what are some of the things that have been accomplished, but there's so much more to do, right?
Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. Thank you, Bobby. to my fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here to also share the InvestKL story. We started in 2011 with a very special task to look at how we can attract large foreign multinationals and fast-growing companies to look at Kuala Lumpur as their regional hub for business, for talent, as well as innovation activities. And that's where activities, what fits best within a city type of setting. Yeah. When we started back then, if we realize it or not, it is no longer a country versus country situation. It is a city versus city situation. We are compared to many other cities around the globe here, especially in Asia Pacific. And many of our deals are looking at how the companies were evaluating another city location compared to Kuala Lumpur. When we come across investments that do not fit the greater Kuala Lumpur area, we are happy to pass on to the corridors that we have been working on closely to look at how we can leverage as well as drive that inclusive factor for the whole growth of Malaysia. And with that particular activities in mind, we have seen some good successes. Companies that have dominated their hubs in Kuala Lumpur are largely from Europe, Americas, as well as from Asia. Moving forward, it's not just about sitting on our laurels and being happy about what we have achieved, looking at how we can push further, how we can look at newer opportunities, how we can look at newer collaborations in attracting the newer type of investments. So from that aspect, I'd like to share at the moment. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Azmi. We'll move up the map. Tony, over to you, sir. In terms of Penang, obviously great stories, long time, a hub worldwide, a global hub, not just regional. And I'm sure there are so many great things that have been undertaken. But what's the next storyline, for example, or some of your thoughts, please?
Thank you, Bobby. Fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, salam sejahtera. I think we, over the past 50 years, I guess, we've been quite successful in creating the manufacturing ecosystem, especially in high tech, in E&E and medical tech. I think that has been a good, strong pillar of the economic growth besides tourism. And so Invest Penang has done an excellent job in attracting manufacturing FDI and grown the ecosystem significantly. The other pillar, obviously, is tourism. And obviously, with COVID, we've been suffering a lot from it. And so I guess the concerns for the economic growth of Penang, we being the second smallest state with hardly any resources at all other than people, what would be that next pillar of growth? And so for us, Digital Penang was set up, and we are almost about 1 year old. And obviously, the next pivot is to look at digital services and obviously digital technology. And that's the reason why we need to basically focus on moving into more the high value added services type of business, right? And investments. How do we create an ecosystem for digital services and digital technology to grow? And that's basically what will be the next challenge for us and focus. Not forgetting, obviously, to continue to build the ecosystem in manufacturing, because I think in the future, competition is going to be about ecosystems. Thank you.
That's a wonderful point you make. We will definitely speak about ecosystems, Tony and everyone else. I like the way you put it as competition amongst ecosystems, right? You're absolutely spot on. But let's move on. Fajaffri, my good friend, over to you, sir. Your mandate is very interesting, and it covers quite a wide territory of the nation. Almost, if I were to be geographically correct, perhaps almost half the nation in terms of their landmass. So very different, what I would call competencies across various states. How are you looking at things, and what are some of the endeavors that you are looking at, Fajaffri, that are either similar or distinct, and leveraging, I think, of the local competencies.
Yeah, okay, Bobby, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum, selamat petang, salam sejahtera. First, I would like to say thank you for inviting NCIA to be part of this panel. Okay, so going back to Bobby's question, it's very interesting to state that NCER, the Northern Corridor Economic Region, covers 4 states. And of course, I think it's huge in terms of land size, and it's about 9.5 million population. And within these 4 states, if you look at the maturity, Penang, of course, that's why I think testament that Mr. Tony Yeoh is here representing Penang on its own, right? Penang is the most matured economies when it comes to these 4 states. So that's, I think, what we look at when the corridor was formed, like what Datuk Ismail was mentioning, is, of course, the ultimate goal is to realize Malaysia to be a developed country. And of course, within the region itself, there are some imbalances. Yeah, so if you look at in terms of like Penang compared to Perlis, to Kedah, and to Perak. Yeah, so, and we look at this from the parameters of socioeconomic parameters, such as the unemployment, out migration. You can see that in Perak alone, it's the highest in terms of people moving out of state to other areas, especially to the Klang Valley and of course to Penang. Yeah? And it creates a different set of issues, you know, in terms of economic, social problems, etc. So the whole idea of setting the corridor, especially in the north, is to basically, if we can reduce that gap, you know, within the state. And of course, Penang will still be there as the, you know, flag bearer in terms of how do we bring up a certain expansion from Penang to the rest of the state. Maybe Penang can focus on the high-end game, and the rest can actually catch up, right? So we're looking at that model as well. And what is interesting is to look at even the location-wise, we are basically bordering Thailand, also an entry into, you know, into China, Vietnam, etc. So there are huge opportunities in terms of free trade and movement of goods, like Johor and Singapore, etc. So we have many exit and entry points within the states in the north. So there are areas that there are a lot of potential that we see. And of course, during the COVID-19 pandemic, things are a bit impacted. We understand there are certain sectors that are losing out. Tourism, for example, yeah. So I think there's some issues that we're going in and helping out. But there are also winners. Yeah. So I will quote a few examples today, and I will explain on how do we work it out and what kind of targets and goals that we have to, in order to improve the situation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Fajaffri. I mean, those are beautiful views. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. I think this is such a range of perspectives, you know, that you have all presented. So I would like to start with one question on Datuk Ismail. You made a very interesting point about, you know, the confluence between policy and the pace of change, right? Industry's pace of change versus policy either following or lagging or leading. Would you care to elaborate on that? And I would also like Azmi, Tony, and Fajaffri also to take a shot at that same question. What are you seeing as challenges, right? And let's get the challenges out of the way. We will talk about the opportunities later. But policy is almost always lagging industrial, you know, pace. And what are you gentlemen really endeavoring at? And that would love to hear from you first.
Okay. If you look at the development of any nation, any city, or any region for that matter, we develop policies and we establish laws in order for us to be able to do things, in order to achieve something. So in the case of Iskandar Malaysia, we want to achieve economic growth in a big way, in an exponential way. But when we see the policies and the laws are not on our side, then it begs us to ask whether those policies have been serving us well. Now, for instance, just now my colleague Jaffrey has mentioned about the relationship between Johor, Iskandar Malaysia, particularly with our neighboring country, Singapore, for instance. Now, for many years, you find that some of the policies that we have put in place are actually too protective. We are looking at ourselves inwardly, to the extent that by doing that, we are not allowing our economy to spread into our neighboring country. Instead, by being overly protecting ourselves, we are actually allowing the economic influence of our neighbor to enter and spread into this state and into this region. So this is where we need to tell the the leadership of the country and the state and say, look, of course, in order to do that, we need to take a bold step in order for us to allow this to happen. So the result of which, for instance, once, let's say in the area of healthcare, in the past, we have been sending people over across to our neighbor to seek medical treatment. Why? Because we have not been able to provide enough facilities. And at the same time, we are not capitalizing on the competitiveness by allowing more facilities to be made available here in Iskandar, Malaysia. Now, over the last 15 years, we have been working very closely with the business community to develop more private hospitals. Hence, we have Regency expanding their operation, Gleneagles, Thompson is coming in, and of course, our very own KPJ hospital. Now we have more than 15 private hospitals of international standard operating in Iskandar, Malaysia. As a result, we now see a reverse flow of people, not only from within Malaysia, but from our neighboring countries, including Indonesia, and as far as Europe, coming into Iskandar, Malaysia to seek medical treatment. So if we have not challenged the policy to allow for the openness of the economy, then we will never be achieve the same. I'm sure this is also shared by my colleague like Azmi from KL and also from Penang as well as from Northern Corridor, that these are the things that we have to do. Now, that's one example. Definitely the other example, let's say in the area of housing. What has been in the past is that, and in fact until today, the government is always of the view that there is this policy of every household shall own, the word is own, a house. So all efforts that has been put to place now is to build as many houses as possible so that people, regardless of their income, will be made affordable to own those houses. Now the word is ownership. The word is ownership. Yeah. Now, we also have been receiving a lot of complaints and issues from housing developers that they say that they cannot go on building low-cost houses for the affordable group. And to the extent that they have to cross-subsidize. So a middle-income household who might be purchasing a house that would cost 500,000 may have to pay an additional 100,000 because the additional 100,000 is cross-subsidized. It is okay, but this cannot prolong. So what should we do? We should have a better understanding on how the consumer's lifestyle now. So what we've discovered, Bobby, is that there is now a new trend of the workforce, especially the young workforce, where ownership is no longer of their priority. Yes. They no longer want to own houses. Yes. They want to be free. They want to be detached from ownership. It is only later in their career when they reach maybe late 30s or early 40s, then only they talk about settling down and owning a property. So we have not catered for this changing lifestyle and changing consumer. So what we've done in Iskandar, Malaysia is to encourage more houses being built in which IRDA is spearheading for rental only. And in so doing, we offer at a rate that is affordable and allow this young workforce to save their money for later years where they are able to choose houses that is more affordable to them. So these are two examples which I'm quoting where we went about to challenge the policy, and of course we need to dismantle some of the laws and regulation that has been in place.
That's lovely. That's lovely. That I think the second example you gave of aligning the entire nation and this policy construct with the modern age, right? And really recognizing it and flexing the policy and your actions. I think that is phenomenal. It's interesting that not many people know about it, though. I'm sure we have some marketing work to do. But I would presume that I think these are the kind of stories, and I'm sure you're leveraging a lot of digital underpinnings to make it happen. I'm sure, right? So that it reaches out to the furthest person out there and also becomes an inclusive model. Am I correct in assuming that, Datuk?
Yes, correct. In the development of our, we call it Prisma, Perumahan Iskandar Malaysia, which has been very successful. We gave this thought process even at the design stage. We have introduced IBS. We have introduced the green development technology, and there are several features that would not normally be able to be enjoyed. But this doesn't come easy. We need to convince the government that this is something that is good for the rakyat. And the other example which I would like to quote is as regards public transport, where later, if I have the time, I will share with you some of the technological advancement that has happened around the world, where we are bringing it into Iskandar Malaysia in our effort to introduce the public transport system through our Iskandar Malaysia bus rapid transit.
Wonderful, wonderful, great. Thank you so much, Azmi. If I may move to you, and then let's take a different question given the pace of the conversation here. Fajaffri made a very wonderful point about migration, right? We have a lot of migration from the hinterlands. Typically, KL is your primary, Penang, of course, as well. But I think the bulk comes to KL, the larger Klang Valley. While I think about a decade ago, Malaysia did embark on a metropolis concept, and of course, InvestKL was significantly involved. Greater KL came to be as part of Pemandu. I'm sure, Azmi, you know it more than I do. So much work has been done, good work has been done, and we have seen a lot of migration coming in. Are we looking at reverse migration? Are there certain de-urbanization strategies that InvestKL is perhaps spearheading or thinking on, where digital comes to play, right? With the 5G, network supposed to come in. Do you believe that a de-urbanization is probably one of the best strategies to actually ensure the country as a whole develops equitably, right? And not a KL up and then, Penang and Johor and everything else seems to be somewhere lost in translation. What do you say, Azmi?
Yes, certainly, Bobby. Picking up from that point, Malaysia has gone through a number of phases, from the agriculture into the industrial and moving towards digital. We must take a page from other countries, developed countries, about their mobility in going to work, in education, in business, in social, and so on. And taking that leaf from developed countries, how would we want Malaysia to be? No doubt, KL is the melting pot. Everyone comes here to find a job, experience, and so on and so on. They settle down and things like that. And this has been going on for a number of years. We are seeing that as Malaysia move forward, there needs to be a certain disengagement. When I say a certain disengagement, it's not in a very negative way, but it's more importantly, it's about Kuala Lumpur focusing and really looking at what we can do best as a city location. Today, you've got within Klang Valley alone, 3 million people pre-COVID, 3 million people traveling into Kuala Lumpur. Work for education and for everything else. Yeah? And that's from the surrounding of Selangor and Negeri Sembilan. What we are looking at with MNCs, especially or businesses, is when they are looking at a particular center in Kuala Lumpur, and when they have matured to a certain level, can they go next?
Yeah.
We would love them to go to the second-tier cities in Malaysia. Otherwise, they'll be moving out into other countries, and we wouldn't want that to happen. When we talk about second-tier cities, it can be Malacca, it can be Ipoh, it can be Penang for that matter. Yeah, because we are seeing the same competency levels. We are reducing the need to migrate, and at the same time, perhaps there are people within the city coming to a certain age that want to go back to your hometown to settle down and to do many other things. So we are seeing a little bit of that trend before COVID happens. So I'm very supportive of all the infrastructure projects, especially the double tracking. Yeah? We've got a fantastic double tracking north to Kuala Lumpur. I'm so looking forward to Kuala Lumpur all the way to Johor Bahru. Jaffrey, who travels up and down by ETS, and I do travel up and down as well by ETS. That facilitates that. Without even thinking, you board the train and you go to Ipoh for a meeting. Yeah. That's the kind of reality that we want Malaysia to go into. Yeah? And that spilling over is where you will see businesses looking at the need, do I need to be in Greater KL? Or specifically, do I need to be within KLCC? KLCC is very much today an oil and gas hub.
Yeah.
In the outskirts a little bit, a lot of the global business services who are there. Yeah, no doubt these activities can all come together, but the supporting activities we can see, especially the small medium enterprises, could be located within the other parts of the city. So certainly, as a prerequisite, will be education. Moving forward as well, we are moving on, or we have invested into 3G, 4G, and soon 5G. Very key. Yeah, and with that as well, the need to also look at the lifestyle. People want to be outside of Kuala Lumpur perhaps because of the lifestyle, and that's where putting those two together, elements together, it also eases the pressure for the stakeholders or the administrators of the city of Kuala Lumpur, and to look at what we can focus a lot more our attention to.
Yeah. Wonderful. I mean, Azmi, I think you made some amazing points, especially I like the fact that you are in general supportive of the deurbanization piece of the puzzle, because we can't have people crowding into one city and it stretches. I think KL or Greater Klang Valley today is already almost busting at the seams, right? And we are having resources stretched ad nauseum as we look at sewerage, water, transportation, like you rightly pointed out. These are blowing out, and we can only do so much with technology. I think there's a much better solution. But I would like to flip the same question to Tony. You talked about ecosystems, Tony, and I think you made a very important point about how do we enable an ecosystem. So taking off from Azmi's point, and I would like you to take a shot at two pieces of this point. One was the urbanization or the deurbanization piece, as you're seeing, for example, on the island of Penang versus, the mainland, right? There is still that same similar problems, maybe not as big. The second piece is on the tiering of cities. So whichever you want to take first, Tony. The world has been instructed by the fact that there are mega cities, there are mini cities, first tier, second tier, third tier, fourth tier, and we almost always tier them in accordance with costs only. But we're not looking at anything else. So I would love, Tony, yourself, and Fajaffri, yourself as well, to take a shot at the tiering of cities. But Tony, start with the ecosystem, please.
Right. So I think, if anything that the COVID has shown us is that the concept of a hub has actually morphed, because I don't think it is very physical anymore. And remote working is probably going to be, or hybrid working is going to be a change that we have to face going forward. So in that kind of a context, I think basically, people will choose lifestyle and that balance as what Azmi has mentioned earlier, and not move away from crowded city and still be able to deliver the same type of productivity. I think that would be the kind of change that we will probably see happening. I think physical infrastructure is still important. But it's more about creating that lifestyle to support that work. And I think that concept of hub would change. So in terms of building an ecosystem around that is obviously not just about attracting investors only just for that particular sector, but it's also a more balanced type of investment across various sectors to see how you could create the same type of lifestyle. And that ecosystem obviously cannot just be, it's about the entire local plus the foreign investments, right? So it cannot just be foreign investors coming in. So that kind of ecosystem is important. The second point about tiering of cities, I think people may choose to look at living in less crowded cities, because I think why would I need to queue for food or queue for restaurants, and the competition for a lot of all these resources is going to be frustrating for a lot of them and time consuming, right? So I think that may be one of the choice decisions people make around work-life balance. And so probably tier 2 cities may be attractive. But then I think going back to that, I mean, from a Malaysian point of view, I think we need to look at it. How do we create that connectedness between cities? I think that's very important.
Right, right. I think that's a beautiful point you make about tiering, right? When you look at large nations, you're informed by the distance, by the size, by the spread of population. We're not a very large country, so I think to Datuk Ismail's initial points about inclusive development is that every region is the same, right? We should see the same level of development, for example, the same KLCC everywhere else. But for Fajaffri, to you, sir, you oversee 4 states that have, for want of a better term, been considered still, fairly laggards as it comes to overall development. You mentioned socioeconomics is a big challenge, and that is what is driving a lot of the outward migration. How do you see that changing, and particularly in the context of what we have at our disposal today, the technologies that play, the mindsets that have changed, right, of people in terms of being able to work at home? How do you see that playing into your overall NCIA strategy?
Okay, Bobby, thank you. I think what is important to note is that, Penang as the most mature, the 3 other states are still lagging. So there are areas, that we're looking at. We have a robust strategy in how do we address this in terms of the outward migration. As you heard today, the unemployment among graduates are growing, mismatch of skills, and all this. So we look at it holistically. There are 3, we call it our 3-prong approach. At the end of the day, it's about the rakyat, it's about the people. Whatever that we do today, it all boils up or ends up with the people enjoying the benefits, right? And we look at, across the unemployed graduates, the orang asli, the mothers, women, youth. So how do we do this? We have to look at physical development. Of course, digital is important. The technology is there, but in order to entice investment into some of the areas, especially in the lagging states, we need to have some sort of physical development. If you look at Penang today, I think there is no industrial park, and people question why do we have to create a park in Penang? Well, I think being in proximity with Thailand, there's huge advantage of having a park or having an inland port just next to the border, and it allows that transaction to happen, and of course police can prosper from there. In Kedah, we are setting up, especially at the border side as well, the Kedah Science and Technology Park. We are looking at bringing good universities over. We are leveraging on the logistic opportunities that's going to happen at the border. In fact, recently, Harta Lega also just announced that they're coming in big time. And of course, Harta Lega being one of the glove players, they are one of the main recipients of the COVID-19 situation. So the glove are actually in high demand. So we have our Kedah Rubber City as well. This project has been lagging behind for almost 10 years. Thailand has gone ahead. They already had their Thailand Rubber City number 2. We have yet to start. So only recently, I think the government has put in, together with the private sector who came in, so we're looking at our first rubber city to be set up in Kedah, and I think the momentum is very good today. So in Perak, of course, Penang, we have Batu Kawan, they're very mature and there are big companies coming in, and so we say fantastic. But in Perak, we are looking at a new park, especially in Meru, in Ipoh. And of course, looking at the situation where people are migrating out from Ipoh, from Perak. So we feel that these are the states that require some intervention. So basically, Perak is right smack in the middle between Penang and Ipoh, NCIA. And we feel that even industry, the digital industry like GBS, can be a good opportunity to be set up in Ipoh. And if you look at the livability, the appeal to the youngsters, like in Klang Valley or in Cyberjaya or in Penang, Ipoh can offer that today. And I think the cost of living, the lifestyle in Ipoh is quite good, even for youngsters. So I think something that we are working closely with the state government of Perak, through InvestKL as well, and MDAC, of course. I think MDAC has been very instrumental working with us on this. So we do welcome investment into GBS or digital economy in Ipoh. So I think these are the some of the sectors, Bobby, that we're looking at. The physical development, some digital continuity. Maybe it's no longer exciting to be in Klang Valley for GBS, but maybe if you look at Ipoh, with the cost of doing business is much cheaper. And of course, being the government agency, we can throw in the incentive, etc. We work closely with MIDA and the rest of the guys with MOF to ensure that this happens.
Wonderful. I think you made a very, very important point, Fajaffri, is that for long, I think we have been conditioned, development has been a function of people going to places where jobs are created. And I think we are now sitting at a point in economic development, not just in Malaysia, but worldwide, is we need to start flipping that entire model, right? And saying, can we take jobs to people? And I believe the four of you gentlemen, that is your primary goal, right? One of your many primary goals is how do you get jobs to people and not lose people from your regions? And I think, Fajaffri, you made a phenomenal point. It has always been spoken about, what has not really been, as intrinsic or as successful. So I would like to, have each one of you take a shot at it. Datuk, what are some of the endeavors that you're involved in? Bringing jobs to people, right? And I'm not talking just about Johor City or Iskandar, but the state as a whole, one of the largest states with a sizable population. What are some of the things that you may be endeavoring at?
When you talk about economic theories and applied economics, of course, there are a lot of school of thoughts that are coming with it.
Yeah, true.
I'm always of the view that when we talk about nation building, whilst people talking about balanced growth, I will always disagree with them. I will always say that in order for a nation to grow, there has to be imbalanced growth. Because no part of the nation shares the same characteristic.
Yeah.
Either you are physically challenged, or the population itself has been for many years living in a tradition and culture that would not allow for the development in a way in which we want to see happen. See,
right.
I do not have to cite example, but we've seen from there, and also because of the natural disconnect. Yeah, for example, Sabah and Sarawak is divided by sea, by water, in Semenanjung Malaysia. So that is where we really need to plan from an overall perspective to get the best from every location that we plan. Now, for example, looking at Johor, people always argue why Iskandar Malaysia is only focused in the southern part of Johor, and the other parts of Johor is not enjoying the benefits of its growth. Well, if you put this back in historical perspective, if not for Iskandar Malaysia, we wouldn't be seeing the economic growth that is happening in the state now. Right. So in economic terms, the spread effect is very important, but we need to create the hub first. So Iskandar Malaysia is that hub where from there you will create this dispersal of growth, where in the not so far future, the whole of the state of Johor will be enjoying the true economic growth spilling over from the happenings of Iskandar Malaysia. But having said that, Bobby, what is really important for regions like Iskandar Malaysia is we do not want to be isolated, or we do not want to be standing alone. We need to work hand in hand with other regions, with other cities, and with other states. Because at the end of the day, the growth is about attaining the nation's vision. So we may have to forego some of the investment and allow those investments to take place elsewhere. If it doesn't meet to the, we cannot be too stingy about it and want to take everything on our plate. So we need to be selective, and we need to discuss it. And we also must, at the same time, in our view, that has been in practice in Iskandar Malaysia, is that we Iskandar Malaysia also provide what we term as the test bed for others. For example, in public transport, we provide the test bed for the whole nation. When we embark upon the BRT, people see that we are taking a different path. Whilst Kuala Lumpur, Azmi, you are into MRT, monorail, and LRT, but we choose to be different because we see that the scale of development and the level of wealth in this part of the peninsula is there's a huge difference from those in Kuala Lumpur. Their density is a lot higher. We are 3 times less density population compared to Lumpur, for instance. So we need to develop something that is affordable. And this is where we need to provide Iskandar Malaysia at the test bed, because Iskandar Malaysia mirrors the same characteristic with other cities apart from Klang Valley. So these are the areas in which we would like to see happen, and we shall continue to share what we achieve, and definitely we will continue to be mutually supportive of each other.
Absolutely, I think that you really hit the nail on the head, right? Inclusive development doesn't have to be equitable all the time, and pace does follow history, culture. We are informed by all of them, and you rightly pointed it out. But I actually appreciate the fact that you talked about being a test bed, density. Sometimes we don't, the general public does not appreciate these nuances, right? They don't know the details. Either we are bad at communicating, or they are bad at understanding, whatever be those reasons. So there seems to be this whole thing about paint everybody with the same brush. What I'm informed by, I think all the gentlemen, you are all aligned to this. I would like to give you a quick story, a quick 10-second story on what Colombia did way back in 2011. Again, a very underdeveloped nation, as you can imagine, wrecked by drug trafficking and all that stuff, right? You and I have read enough stories. But eventually, they got their heads around. And in 2011, they went about establishing 2 things. One is they identified what are the strengths across the entire country. It's a pretty sizable country with about 80 million people, I guess. 7 cities, like whether it's a Johor or KL, 7 cities, and they determine what is each city great at and what each city is not great at. And I think, Datuk, you made a phenomenal point exactly about that. If there is something that Johor can't develop, perhaps Penang can do it, right? And you would rather talk to Tony and tell, hey, Tony, there's an investor here. Please go ahead and do it, because you guys are better. We can't do it. So we don't want to, give them a wrong indication. And that's exactly what Colombia did. And today they have a phenomenal industry. Again, very regional, very disparate. There's a national policy, but obviously, like how we are structured here, they're doing phenomenally well. So my question, therefore, before we end this, we've got another 5 minutes, gentlemen, is, and I will start with Azmi. Are you seeing opportunities like this? And I would like even Tony and Fajaffri to have the same, to kind of respond to the same question. Are you seeing opportunities where you may not be able to develop it, but there is this other part of my country who definitely can do it, right? And I'm coming toward the point of, Tony, like you said, ecosystem. Penang is one ecosystem, but Malaysia is the larger ecosystem, right? So in that context, I would love to hear your thoughts. Azmi, starting with you, please.
Yes, it's back towards wanting to be focused. For Greater Kuala Lumpur, it's about focus to be a regional hub in the services sector.
Right.
Anything that's more labor intensive or a lot more land intensive outside of Greater Kuala Lumpur. And we have been consistent with that activity throughout our operations. And at the same time, we are seeing that with the companies that are operating within Greater KL, their ecosystem cuts across many states, and we're happy with that because that's how growth can be pursued, and that's how we can initiate the activities as well. So moving forward, KL is looking towards a lot more of the activities in the innovation space, where this year we launched the Greater Kuala Lumpur Life Lab. It's about bringing the MNCs, putting them together with universities in Greater Kuala Lumpur, as well as collaboration with small, medium enterprises throughout Malaysia.
Wonderful. That's amazing. I think you hit the nail on the head. You've chosen a field that you want to excel at, and everything else, you know that you've got colleagues and Tony and Datuk and Fajaffri to be able to enable it, right? Tony, over to you, sir.
So I think just to echo what Azmi said, I think especially we are a bit more mature now in the industrialization. So, and land is scarce for us. So the yield on the land is very important, right? So we cannot be taking manufacturing and the lower end of the supply chain. So in terms of, if we look at the northern region itself for an entire supply chain, I mean, I have actually people, the MNCs complain and say that, you know, I have to import a certain screw or a certain packaging or whatever. I mean, why can't all this be done in another neighboring state, for example, right? So that's how we should be looking at the whole supply chain, and then say aggregate them. And then we are actually strong as an ecosystem, and they don't have to go to Vietnam, or they don't have to go to Indonesia or whatever, right? So competitively, that positions Malaysia a lot better in that sense. And so I think the future for us is we have to look at it collectively across all the corridors, the connectedness of the corridors, right? How do we connect and compete as a country against our neighbors?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Tony. It's like, you know, let's not miss the forest for the trees, but let's not miss the trees as well. The example you gave, or just about a screw or a nut. You're right. Sometimes, you know, these small things come back to bite us big time, right? And we have seen that happen many times. Phenomenal point. Fajaffri, over to you, sir. Your views, given all of these collaboration, and you need all the ideas you can get. You need all the opportunities, obviously, because of the developmental agenda. But what are some of those things you're looking at?
Yeah. So okay, Bobby. I think what Tony mentioned, that, you know, in terms of working with others, you know, we are looking at niche development today. And what Mr. Azmi is saying, we are working closely with InvestKL as well. You know, we're looking at, you know, setting up principal offices in KL, Greater KL. But the manufacturing arm can come to Perak or can come to Perlis, you know. I mean, why not? So, and Penang, of course, Penang should be playing at a very high end in terms of, because cost of doing business, you have to look at that. There are cheap alternative elsewhere that's coming up, and we are seeing Kulim High Tech is attracting. So I think there's a lot of symbiosis that's happening today, and it's natural. And those are happening at areas which are matured. But if we look at areas that still require intervention, this is where I think the right thinking, the right strategy needs to be put in place. We shouldn't be competing. We should be looking at areas that actually enhances the natural attractiveness of that particular area, especially like at the border. So we look at logistic gain. If Perak, maybe we look at education, maybe, you know, and we have Proton over there currently, you know, a big player. And I think GBS can be the next best thing that can happen in Ipoh. So I totally subscribe to that. You know, we work together closely, because at the end of the day, it's back to the rakyat. You know, we want the rakyat, the people to enjoy, you know, the benefit and the improvement in their lifestyle. So wonderful. I think, you know, we will work closely together with the rest of the corridors.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful, gentlemen. We are at 4 o'clock, right on the dot. Thank you so very much for your time and attention, and for your very invaluable, you know, thoughts and perspectives. I think if I were to summarize very quickly in terms of all that you said, is collaboration is the way to go across various corridors. You have your goals, but you are very conscious, and you're doing all the right things to be able to collaborate with each other. I think that is a phenomenal thing. And maybe, or at least from my view, I might say that we probably need a little bit more marketing around it, gentlemen, is for the Rakyat to know that all the good stuff that you gentlemen are doing, I don't think they even know that there's so much collaboration happening. For example, when Azmi says, Tony, I can't do this, can you take it over? Or you know, Datuk, you say the same thing to a Fajaffri, right? Nobody knows it. I think we have awesome opportunity here. The digital agenda would help us. I think more importantly, what you gentlemen have talked about is ecosystems, and I think that is phenomenal. Again, another piece, we probably need to communicate a lot more about the role of yourselves. And more importantly, I know we didn't have the time to speak, unfortunately, is what is the private sector doing, right? They are the core, right? How much are they doing to enable all the good stuff that you gentlemen are doing and your organizations are doing? Hopefully we'll have another conversation just to focus on that side. Are they doing enough? And I think I wouldn't take it for granted that they are doing enough, unless proven otherwise. But maybe, I mean, it's like it takes two to tango. Perhaps there is enough on the other end of the spectrum. They need to buck up as much as you gentlemen are bucking up too. But we're out of time, unfortunately. But thank you very much, gentlemen. It is an honor conversing with you. And I hope this makes sense to all the audience and everybody else who listen to it. So Hasrul, over to you. Gentlemen, have a good day and rest of the week ahead. Thank you so very much.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby, and all the esteemed panelists for that wonderful exchange of our investors outlook, left, right, center, KL, Johor, Penang, Northern region, wherever you are in Malaysia. Thank you for making Malaysia great with these investments. Thank you, esteemed panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that session, we have concluded day 2 of the Digital Investment Week of Malaysia Tech Month 2021. Once again, let us all thank our esteemed speakers from this morning for powering up your day with their outlooks, with their ideas and insights on pragmatizing the digital economy. Now we invite our participants to join us as we resume our agenda tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. But in the meantime, do check out our agenda for satellite events happening all around the MTM 2021 space. We also invite participants to make use of the virtual networking lounges available. So you're welcome to reach out to the event admin by the chat box for any further assistance if you require. And with that, we end this session on a high note and immeasurable thanks. Stay tuned. See you tomorrow again for Digital Investment Week 2021. It's me, Hasro, signing out.